Welcome to the United States of America podcast. I am your host, Niti, and we are broadcasting live from the Food Church here on North Carolina. If you've missed past episodes, please be sure to take the time to watch the first episode and watch the rest like a documentary. We're a people at peace, and we have declared peace to all nations around the world. This is not a marketing or a promotional channel. We are shining a light on knowledge that is being hidden from you, and we're sharing the truth about your birthright and your inheritance. We have moderators who are assisting with the comment section, so please be kind and self-govern. And if you have any questions, please put them in all caps and enter them only once per show. Today, I am joined on air with Hudson Roberts, co-coordinator on Idaho. Welcome, Hudson. I'm sorry.
No, you're totally fine, Niti. Thanks for having me on. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, this is what happens when you come back from a break, right? It's like
Mhm.
we're in full summer mode and trying to get back into the groove of the shows. And I just want to welcome everyone. It's a really great time to be alive. There's so many big things that are happening right now, and I'm really excited, Hudson, to finish we're going to kind of go, friends, back into this little deep dive of something that Hudson and I were talking about the last time that you were on the show. And I asked Hudson, I was like, did you have a chance to think about what it was that we were talking about? And I'm just going to remind everyone what we had said. But we were talking about law. I mean, as we're talking about often, and you made a statement. You said the only premise for a law to exist in the first place is the value of life. And I said, you mean the value of time. And now we've had a lot of time to kind of think about that. And guys, we thought this would be a good thing for us to kind of break down in this conversation with all of you. And if you have any comments or whatever about it, then please feel free to chime in. But I was telling Hudson the reason that it's about time. I asked him. I said, "Hey Hudson, have you seen the movie Groundhog's Day?"
It's one of my favorite movies. It's a great one.
And I was saying it was a notice that they put out for us. I said the Groundhog's Day movie was a notice. And in the movie, I think they just keep repeating the day. But in actuality, what what has happened is they're noticing us, the living people, that we are trapped in a matrix that many of us probably know it a little bit more like reincarnation. I know this becomes a corporate debate because it's a religious debate for a lot of people of whether there is reincarnation or there's not reincarnation. And the bigger point is, as we know, Hudson, we've been lied to about everything, including most of our spiritual faiths have somehow been bastardized in a little way here and there, little tweaks here and there. Um, for example, how the King James Bible was written without, you know, like it's a godless Bible versus the other. And there are a lot of people that would probably have a lot to say about that as well. But if we know about the truth, if we have knowledge of the truth now, which is what we're revealing here on this podcast always, um, then we're just sharing that truth, right? And part of that is, number one, man is supposed to be able to live for thousands of years. Also, we get to create our own reality. We're supposed to operate under God's law, which is natural law, which is aligned with nature and nature's God. Right, Hudson?
Yeah, no, I'm actually so grateful that we're even talking about this because I think that I think that the words we use, specifically you and me, we come from two different perspectives completely, probably, and so it's really cool to try to like bridge the gap of the words we use and come to the same comprehension of what we're talking about. Um, and going along with the Groundhog Day thing and the reincarnation thing, I've always been under the impression, and I kind of mentioned this to you briefly off call, but I've always been under the impression because I have considered myself Christian, I do follow Yeshua, reading the Bible and everything, that this life is actually meant to be, that it's a mortal life and there's purpose to it, to us coming down here and to experiencing what we're experiencing and feeling what we're feeling and learning what we're learning, but that we truly are eternal beings by nature. And you said something off call, and maybe you could elaborate on call right now, is just like about how the matrix you're talking about, obviously we're meant to exist and we're meant to be here, but the matrix you're talking about is it's basically harvesting our life force, and specifically through the means of what we're talking about is the time illusion, or the illusion of time.
Right. Because of going back to law, that man's law was only created to hold us in bondage, because we're not really supposed to. There is no man that stands over me, only my creator. And we all agree on this. Now, there's a whole different, I guess we have to kind of touch that a little bit with this conversation as well. Is, you know, there is no, again, all religions are incorporated. This is something that most people don't want to really talk about or admit or accept, but it is true. And it was created by man, right? But our spiritual beliefs, the religions, they have been designed and limiting in time. Now, that doesn't mean that we haven't had experiences with our creator that are difficult to put into words, which is the reason why the Bible was written with all these parables, with all of these testimonies. I mean, all the Bible is the Old Testament, the New Testament, and it's supposed to be our testament, because as we come into this time space reality, because I told Hudson, I agree with him that we are eternal because it's our life-giving force. It's our energy. We are energy. Obviously, there's no beginning or end to energy. We're just energy, infinitely. And so, but when we choose to come into this time space reality, this realm, we come here to see it, feel it, taste it, touch it, smell it. It's a physical realm that we come into for a moment in time, which, used to be up to 1,000 years. Okay. And now it's a lot shorter because we have been um, presumed upon. We've had an invasion, and we've been kind of locked into this very limited time space reality now that we're calling Groundhog's Day. Right.
Yeah. So just to add to that, one of the things that this is something I tell people all the time. Life is a semantics discussion. There's so much of the corporate veil and the corporate mindset that is just wrapped up in this legalese and just misunderstanding, miscomprehending the words that we're using. Right. Even just caught myself just then. But a good example of this is when it comes to like religious dogmas versus scientific language, and how it kind of differs, but it can be used to say the same point. One of those things for me is when I started reading Anna von Reitz's works and all of her articles and everything, she would talk about aliens a lot, and I was never like a guy that necessarily like believed that aliens were a thing that much. But then I realized at one point when I was reading her articles that what she was describing is exactly what I call demons and devils. Having been raised Christian, studying the Bible and everything, I believe in intelligences, extraterrestrial forces that are coming and visiting the planet and having interactions with man, though I believe them to either be serving the creator or serving the devil, hence either an angel or a demon. And then I realized that even in my own theology, I'm believing I'm comprehending and trusting in the existence of the same thing that Anna was describing, except she's using scientific language to describe it in a way that most modern people would understand it, knowing that there's actually those things. And so coming at a lot of what we're talking about from the perspective of we have to look at what we're discussing on a conceptual level and then rationalize it against what we already know, rather than just taking what somebody says and thinking that it means exactly what our first thought is. And one of the things I realized was last time we were talking, when I said the only reason for law to exist is because of the value of life, and you said no, the value of time, I realized you and I were using the word law completely differently, because I was looking at law as the process of natural repercussion, basically cause and effect. But you were looking at law as specifically the man-made principle used to enforce upon man a specific rule, which
Oh, whoa, right?
was potentially different.
So principles are only natural law.
Yes,
And so
correct.
that's why
So
you're saying principle, okay? And
mhm,
principle, so when I'm referring to natural law, it's those are principles of life. And so yeah, the principles of life are hermetically sealed to protect life.
exactly. Yeah,
And
100%.
right. And the biggest point about that, Hudson, is that no man is enforcing that. Our creator has it hermetically sealed for it to be enforced all the time, and there's no judgment going on. Everyone's saying our creator is judging us or something. No, that's not how it works. The way it works is, and we're here to reveal all the occulted truths, right? So the truth is that morality is not relative, okay? Morality is objective. So morality aligns with the truth, and immorality aligns with lies. And so the only thing, this is something that we kind of talked about off camera as well, was I was telling Hudson, I said that what is it that people are encumbered by? How are they held in bondage? First, it is time, which is what I was saying, right? I was saying that it is they created man's laws in order to control our time. It wasn't there for any other reason, right? And then that time that they're using to control us is enforced by them, right? It's enforced by some guy. And the only reason we allow it is because of the lies. He was saying beliefs, and I was like, yeah, beliefs are lies. We shouldn't operate on beliefs. And we can change our belief, be lie, anytime. We could just change our mind, right? And this is how we break out of the bondage that we're in.
So yeah, this is actually a really good, I think, a place to go that could segue into kind of what we were wanting to go on. But the word belief, let's just talk about that. So the word belief is something that I've used my whole life. Most people, when you say belief, you're talking about something that you believe is true. You could even say it about something that, like, generally speaking, people even use it for things that they know. Like, oh no, I believe that so and so said this. But the interesting thing to Niti's point here is that the word belief actually doesn't necessarily have a usable purpose outside of a lie. And here's why. So when we're talking about truth, okay, if you were to, like, humble yourself and just be really humble and acknowledge that most of what you claim to believe or claim to know, you probably don't actually know. There's only a few things that you actually know to the level that you know you exist. And so you need to get to that point where you segregate the things in your mind from what you actually know to what you only think you know. And the difference in those boxes is we usually label what we know the things we know, and the things that we only think we know is the things that we believe. Like, oh, there's technically a chance this is not true, and technically you do have to continually look at that thing and, you know, give it a little bit of doubt or a little bit of I don't know what the word I'm looking for,
Well,
skepticism.
it's kind of known as opinion.
Opinion, yeah. So there is that section of things that we don't know but that we think. Now, if we're being fully honest, it would be best to use the word assume. Like, oh, I assume that, or I
Mhm.
suppose that. But to say I believe that basically means that I'm acting as though I know it, even though I do not know it,
because somebody told me.
because somebody told me.
Because belief is generally a third party thing. Okay. Like, I believe you, Hudson. And so, therefore, I believe what Hudson's saying. And so now I can go say what Hudson said because I believed him.
Exactly. But the interesting thing, though, is you weren't actually believing me because belief doesn't exist. Because, like you said, it's a lie. You're assuming that I'm correct, or you suppose that I am correct because you're supposing something. And that's totally fine, but call it what it
Or
is.
you
That is a
might, yeah,
supposition. It's not
correct.
necessarily, it's not knowledge on your part. It is a
Right.
supposition. And so to say you believe just kind of muddles it kind of makes things a little bit confusing, gives that gray area where people are like, oh, wait, does
Mm-hmm.
she know it? Does she believe it? Is she assuming? And it just kind of makes it so that we can't communicate as well. And versus if we say things with descriptive words that actually are applicable, then the message is actually conveyed more powerfully. So
Beliefs are something that, by the way, are great on the water, on the high seas, in the inland waterways. Again, this is water language. Okay. And it's funny how it always comes back to that. But when you're out on the high seas with a limited amount of people in a very chaotic, confusing space where men only go to die, right? Because look, if you get lost at sea, you're done. Like, that's it, right? But um, you have to believe whoever is on the boat with you until you can get to somewhere to have some more knowledgeable experience to actually know. Here's the thing that's funny. The corporatocracy doesn't allow you to know things. They don't raise you to know things. And the difference between you, Hudson, and my kids, and or my son and daughter, our sons and daughters who we made sure we homeschooled them, right? If they went to public school, they weren't allowed to know things. We made sure that our progeny know things. They're not
it,
wondering about it.
it's interesting that you call out the that on the sea people believe, like the water jurisdiction, because if you think about it from like a navigation perspective, on the land you can actually know something because there's a physical structure, like there's a mountain and I can see it and I can use that as a point of reference for my travel, right? Whereas on the sea it's constantly changing, it's constantly flowing, and so you only get your coordinates, your navigation, you're kind of guessing, and you're doing this guesswork when you're out at sea and you're navigating. And so naturally it would make sense that jurisdictionally speaking belief exists at sea whereas knowledge exists at land. So that was a good point, I think. um
Yeah.
okay, can I segue into like the time thing real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
this is one of my favorite topics, and this is I talk to people about this all the time because our perception of what time is completely flawed. Where generally speaking, and Hollywood helps with this because they make fun movies like Back to the Future and other things like that, where we're taught that time is linear, right? Like that it exists on a line. And it's funny because even though we don't have the ability to travel back and forward, we kind of assume, especially those of us that are like Christian or believe in God, we assume that God is in and throughout all time, and so he can like jump between places. But the irony here, and this is one of the things I think of, especially thinking about God, if you think about God as omnipotent and omnipresent, he's and perfect, well then he would never need to go back in time because he would have done everything he needed to do back then anyway. So not only would there be no purpose to it, but also that's assuming that time is a dimension, that it exists kind of like space does.
But it does.
Okay, so this is one of the things that this is the exercise I do with my friends all the time. I always say, okay, hey, let's talk about the past. So number one, I always say the past doesn't exist. It only exists in record. It technically is destroyed the moment it's created, because we can never get to it. We have it in record and we can remember it, but the ability to get there just doesn't happen. Like you can't get there. It's in
Well,
the
we
past
can't
and
get
it's
there because
recorded.
we believe we can't.
Yeah. So okay. So and this is where maybe we need to discuss it. I do the same thing with the future, and here we'll do a little exercise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I say, okay, like I'm gonna drop this pen in 5 seconds. Okay, and I'll do this. But then I don't drop the pen. So then the question is like, oh, was that the future? And then it's like, well, I could have dropped the pen. And then the argument is, okay, so the future is only projection. And then it's like, well, could I say that I'm a prophet or that I have the gift of prophecy if I say I'm going to drop this pen in 5 seconds, and then I actually do drop the pen in 5 seconds? Well, then that's just making a decision, and that's just planning on doing something in the future. Hence the reason the creator is omnipotent and omnipresent, because he does have control of a lot of the universe, and he can just say that I'm going to do X, Y, or Z, and then that occurs. And so
That's called
anyway,
us creating our future, right?
my whole purpose, yeah, that's true. My whole purpose in saying this is to convey this idea. The only thing that truly exists is the moment. Okay. Now, the cool thing is the moment will always exist. It has always existed. It will always exist. It's the one singular eternal moment.
You
And
sure you know it, right? Do you know that?
I know that the moment is forever. I
You do?
exist in the moment.
Okay. Okay, well, so I'm just going back to your argument that you were having a little bit with yourself right there about not being able to go to the past, right? So I don't personally know how to do that, but I know that there are people who know how to do that. And
So
they'll say that, okay, because there is a way for people to, okay, maybe it makes more sense for me to say this. We are not able to physically handle a quantum leap. Would you agree to that?
yeah, we would be destroyed
Yeah, we would just
instantly,
become like dust, right?
evaporate. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we can't make a quantum leap physically. But would you agree that we can make a quantum leap mentally?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, yeah, no, yeah, you're right in that we can access the past mentally and intellectually because it exists in the intellectual.
And so hold that thought, okay? That means that I can go back to a moment and I could reparent myself out of that misunderstanding, for example. I'll give you a real example of something that I've done this way because I have done these things, okay? For example, my dad was abusive. He used to abuse my mom, okay? I witnessed this. It You could say that it traumatized me or something, okay? Also, it traumatized my mom. Also, I had to live with her through it and later after. And I could allow that to make my now life with my babies be traumatic for them because of that. Or I could go back to that moment for myself and say, okay, she accepted this for whatever her reasons were that are not mine. It wasn't my free will choice. It has nothing to do with me. And then I chose differently. I'm not in that situation. My husband's nothing like that. Our life is nothing like that. I don't need to repeat that nonsense. And so I therefore refuse to behave in that way ever. And I'm going to create a better new life for my progeny. And I can do an emotional exercise, not emotional, a mental exercise where I can remember and then I can change it and then I can envision what that might feel like. I can be happy about it and then I can come back and I can enjoy that new me of the new life. What do you think?
No, I totally agree. I wouldn't necessarily say that that means that you traveled through time. I think that means that you altered the energy that got created back at that moment. Because when you think about us, like we
Altering
exist.
energy. Hold on. So I altered energy. Isn't that kind of like that? I mean, it's not exactly, Back to
Yeah,
the Future, okay?
I see what you're saying though. Like, because we exist energetically, and
Right.
everything that we do, we're transmitters and receivers simultaneously. So we're both transmitting signals and receiving signals constantly. Everything that we do has significant energetic effect. When we have negative experiences in the past or positive experience in the past, that vibration travels throughout the universe, and I do think that we are all connected on an energetic level. And so at any given moment, it's possible to do a meditation and to focus in energetic, intellectual focus and power onto a specific wave, and you can actually change it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the past exists on a fundamental dimensional level, but it does mean that the record of it, its vibration, and wherever it's recorded, both in our minds and our cells, even if you actually had it in an actual video on a phone, like, you can alter the record, and you can do it so extremely well that it actually heals what was hurt. And so that 100% exists. And I think that when we realize that I think that we'll become more powerful at affecting the future if we realize that the future and the past don't actually exist on a dimensional level. It is a record, and it is a projection and an assumed future. But really, I mean, obviously, like I've explained this, I follow Yeshua. I consider myself Christian and everything. So the Bible says that God is the great I am. And it's such an interesting phrase, the great I am. If you think about it, he's not saying I'm the great I was or the great I will be. He is the great eternal present. And when we say he's omnipresent, it means that his influence, the creator's influence, is everywhere simultaneously. It's not to say that he's like this cool time traveler with he's like jumping in and out of time, because time doesn't necessarily exist. I think time exists the same way that like a centimeter exists. It's a ruler that we use to measure our existence, and the solar system is a huge clock. The Earth rotating around the sun, and so it exists as a ruler to measure our existence, and that's where we get thrown off by the corporate mindset, is because we have criminals that are interested in harvesting our life force to focus on things that profit them. And so if they can create scarcity with time and make us think that it exists on a dimensional level and that we're going to somehow lose it continuously, rather than recognizing that we exist and there is nothing that will stop our existence, we simply are, just like God simply is, then it makes it suddenly like, oh, we're not actually short on time because time doesn't exist on a dimensional level. What we're really short on is maybe opportunity. Like, you can lose an opportunity, but that's different than losing time.
There's cycles. So these cyclic things are real. And I would argue that on some level, we got to recognize the time cycle. Okay. There is a cycle. There's a cycle even of us entering this see it, touch it, feel it existence, and then going back to just being, pure liquid love, right? And coming in and out of this realm, right? There's something to it. I don't fully comprehend that, so I'll leave that right there. I don't have a problem with that. I can leave it alone because I can't know it yet. I'm still kind of studying some of that, okay? This is something that Anna was having a conversation with me about, and I don't fully comprehend it, okay? So I'll leave that one alone for that. But I do want you to think about the cycles. However, it is important for us to operate in the now. And it is also important for us to know that we can reparent ourselves from anything traumatic. Also, that we can heal ourselves physically from anything traumatic. And those are things that I actually have studied and experienced and know, because I've been able to manage it, not just for my own self, from my experience, but I've helped other people do it. And it was taught to me by elders. Okay. So, and I think that every one of us in our life experience may come across, when we're open for it, someone who could help walk us through some of that, right? I'm describing life experiences, right? But the fact that they notice us with that also is interesting, that we're in a time capsule. Isn't that funny? Because they talk about that often.
Yeah, no, 100%. And
they can encapsulate time.
And it's mostly done through belief set, right? People being brainwashed into thinking that we exist linearly when we don't. We just exist.
Our false beliefs. Yes. And that fear of loss that FOMO that
Mhm.
they're talking about all the time. That's the
Yeah.
new thing is the FOMO. But like um but
Yeah, the idea that death is the end is the scary thing for people.
right,
And so
like
the
our
loss of time.
parents, I was telling you that, it's hard to watch our parents right now. Well, they fully believe, like, that their body breaks down and I'm like, you're muscle wasting because you're not standing up. You wouldn't be muscle wasting if you did stand up. How about don't stop standing up sometimes? It's like keep walking, keep moving, keep doing something. But the way the corporatocracy does is they want you to retire and do nothing. But come on, if you're actually enjoying life and you are honoring your life, why would you stop wanting to see it, feel it, touch it, experience something? And why would you let them talk you into believing that if you weren't going to work, then you can't go do something else?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. It's so interesting when we think about like why death is fear or causes fear for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um, and I've thought about that, and it's I think it's the obviously there is value here in life, hence why people are afraid of death anyway, because there's value here and people enjoy the value. But the feeling of loss is what I think people are afraid of. Like not even just like loss because you might be losing a family member, but even just the
Mm.
idea that everything you are could disintegrate into nothing or less than what you consider yourself
Hmm.
as of right now. Um,
You
but
would think, I'm sorry, I just want to, if I may add something to that.
yeah, go for it.
If you actually believe that you should fear death, if you were fearing death, actually, then wouldn't you want to always live like you're dying, which would mean that you would want to jump out of a plane or go and do something and like you're like, I got to do this before, this is my bucket list. Or wouldn't you want to be
Hmm.
doing like a bucket list or something like that?
You'd recognize you have nothing to lose, so you might as well, right? Might as well just send it.
Right. Like this is what okay, so I was telling Hudson about how our parents in that age group, there's so many of them right now that just sit in front of a television set after they retire and they don't do anything. They got to watch their programming and that's all they want to do. And then they also fear death and also got to go to the doctor and also they won't get up and do anything. Isn't that funny? Like, don't you think that would, if nothing, if you really believe that's true, that you're gonna die soon, wouldn't you want to go see all the other things that you could possibly see instead of stay in one room and watch a television? Kind of
Yeah, yeah,
weird. Yeah.
yeah. It is definitely weird. One of the things you said. Do you mind if I kind of segue into a little bit of a different topic?
Sure. Go ahead.
This is just kind of interesting. You had mentioned earlier that the King James Bible has been corrupted because it's become like a godless Bible and everything, as opposed to like the Geneva Bible, which is technically the land Bible and everything. And I kind of wanted to just like say something that I figured out, which is crazy. So Anna had posted something about the Geneva Bible being the land Bible and it actually being the first Bible that was translated into English, blah, blah, blah. And I thought that was kind of interesting. So I actually went and bought a Geneva Bible and I started comparing it to like the King James Version and the Geneva Bible. And one of the things I realized is there's subtle differences. You almost can't tell. So if you're just kind of like quickly running over it, you're not going to notice this. But one of the things that I noticed is the story of the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve and all that stuff. One of the things that's interesting is in the Geneva Bible versus the King James Bible. The King James Bible, God tells Adam and Eve that if they partake of the forbidden fruit, they shall surely die. That's what God says, supposedly. And then later, when the devil or the snake is tempting Eve, he says to Eve, you shall not surely die, but shall be as the gods knowing good and evil, et cetera, et cetera. But the Geneva Bible says something different. It says, when God says it to Adam and Eve, he says, if you partake of the forbidden fruit, thou shalt die the death. He doesn't say thou shalt surely die. He says thou shalt die the death. And then Satan or the devil, the snake, speaking to Eve, says, you shall not die at all. Anyway, I was sitting there and I was thinking, this is weird. King James has got his scholars. They're looking at the Geneva Bible and what they translated it into, and they're like, okay, what should we tweak here? What should we make different? And they use the word surely. And I was like, interesting about the word surely, because the word surely is a non-definitive. It's a like somebody that has the need for the word surely has the need to reiterate that what they're saying is true, right? And obviously, like mortals, I'm imperfect or whatever, and so I say things that are like I make mistakes, and so it's like, oh no, well actually surely it's this, or for sure this. I have the need of the word because I am imperfect, or I make mistakes. But the creator is perfect, so he would not have the use of the word surely. He would just say something as it is, as true, thou shalt die the death. And then the devil in the reverse, he is he has no need of the word surely if he's actually trying to tell a full lie. And so to anyway, the whole purpose of this thought is to say this: the King James version of the Bible tweaked what the Geneva Bible said and made God just a little bit more fallible and the devil just a little bit more honest. And so it's interesting when you're reading through it like that, because it, it it does, and this goes into what you were saying about so many of the like our modern religions and the corporate structure and the dogmas that we get that get created are these little teeny things that tweak our minds into not being able to tell the difference between what is emphatically true and what is false. And it just leads to what I say to a lot of my friends: everything is either true or it isn't. It either exists or it doesn't. Anything that is true is just as true as everything else that is true, and everything that is false is just as false as everything else that is false. And a lot of the dogmas and the corporate mindset that we see nowadays is literally designed to just tweak that enough in our minds that we can't see the truth. Because again, the creator is made to be just a little bit fallible, and the devil is made to be just a little bit honest, when in reality, it's not the case.
In the real, because reality is less than real, and so they make it a reality, and they're creating a reality, a separate reality. And the fact that you picked up on these things is so big, and everybody kind of sees it in a different kind of way. I felt like the Geneva Bible was so much more easy to comprehend and so much more honest. And I think you're kind of saying the same thing, actually. And the way that the King James Bible, it's very water jurisdiction. It's chaotic and confusing, and it almost makes you feel like you're too stupid to know it by yourself, and someone else has to explain it to you, which makes you kind of beholden to,
An
the
intermediary.
yeah, somebody who stands in between you and God all the time, right? And isn't that kind of maybe what the Pope wanted in the first place, or whoever these guys were who decided that only some people should know the truth, and then they decided to occult the rest of the truth, right? And then the other thing that's interesting about what you said is that it said you will die the death. The death. And the other part of it is they're always saying that you should be reborn. You should seek to be reborn. But being reborn means because you were birthed when you died on your birth certificate, and then we have to correct the status and be reborn. Isn't that what we just did when we did that? So that's kind of interesting to think about as well.
That is
And it
interesting.
tells you the whole story in the Bible, because this has been going on for so long, because Satan or Satan or Shaitan, in all the different religious ways that people refer to Satan. Satan is the deceiver, the um the one who's performing these tricks, because it was the fallen angel Satan, Shaitan, they call him different names, but it's the same Satan, who was was so upset that God gave mankind free will. And so he felt like, okay, it is going to be my work to trick them into always choosing, poorly.
So this makes me think of another experience I had when I was um, just undoing the corporate mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I was educated in the home. I didn't go to public school. But even having been outside of the system as much as I was, I still had a significant amount of brainwashing and undoing that I had to do in the corporate mindset. And one of the things I realized was we tend to think of things in the sense of fiction entities so frequently that we're just kept completely blind to something that's so obvious and right in front of us. And one of these examples was, I was reading, I think it was Isaiah or something, and yeah, it was Isaiah. He talks about how it's a prophecy about the future, about how the day will come that thy watchmen shall see eye to eye when the Lord shall bring again Zion. And it was just an interesting comment. Thy watchmen shall see eye to eye. And I remember thinking, oh, so the day is going to come that somebody's going to see eye to eye. Everybody's going to be on the same page. The truth is out, and then it just makes sense, right? That thy watchmen shall be eye to eye. But then I remember thinking, oh, who are the watchmen? Like, who are the watchmen? Like, is that going to be like a crew? Anyway, I'm going and I'm thinking, who are these watchmen? Because I'm thinking of it in like the corporate mindset of like somebody that's got the title, or somebody that's got the role, or somebody that's got the thing that makes them that. And then I realized it's English. It's English. Watchmen, those who watch.
The
People that are
watchers
looking,
are watching.
people with their eyes open. Yeah, it's like literally so much of the truth is hidden in plain sight if we recognize that English like it has been hijacked and turned into like this corporate structure to where we think of everything in the sense of titles and corporations and entities, to the point that I'm sitting here reading Watchmen thinking that it's like some group or some people or some title or some role, some office.
Officers.
Yeah, only to realize I was like, wait, no, the word watchman literally means the men who watch, those that are watching, those that are looking, those that are
watchers
thinking.
are watching. The watchers are watching.
Exactly. So the day will come that prophecy is that the day will come that those who are watching, those who are looking, those who are seeking, will all see eye to eye. No need to communicate, no need to talk. We're all on the same page because we all see it. The truth has come out. And so it helps me realize more and more that the corporate mindset has literally just been designed to brainwash us into not seeing that like what is true. And so when we recognize that, again, we're talking about C jurisdiction, we're talking about corporations that are built for profit. And so we're talking about, if there's a profit to be made, what gives things value is human attention, or not human, attention of mankind, like where we look, where we put our energy, where we focus, hence the whole purpose of the fiat and everything. And so
mentalism.
Once we recognize that, we can break free in that we don't have to put our energy toward things that are only profiting. I mean, like you said, Satan or the ultimate. This is, man, sorry, I just had another thought. Can I say another thing?
Yeah.
There's another thing that was coming to mind. So Satan or Lucifer, it's so interesting when we talk about it, because we start getting to this conversation, and so many of the viewers are thinking, oh, well, they're just getting into dogma themselves. They're trashing on the corporate religious structure, but we're dissecting dogma. But so much of what the Bible talks about is actually just natural law, and it's written in Old English, which makes it sound dogmatic. But for example, we don't have to call it Satan. We don't even have to call it God. We can just say the source that we were created from. We exist, whatever made that happen. And then we can talk about the source that usurps that or that eats that. Okay. And in the universe, we know this. It's a principle called entropy, right? Things go to dissolution if there's not energy completely focused to be able to keep it intact.
Well, or there's also the polarities, and there's always, the positive and the negative polarity. You can't have one without the other. So
yeah. So one of the things I was going to talk about is when it comes to the fear mindset, specifically doubt. Now, doubt exists in the mind as a second guessing something that is apparent. Okay, something that you see, something that's obvious, something that's there, and then we second guess it. And that's where doubt comes in. That's where fear comes in. And the interesting thing is, Satan, as we call him, is literally the usurper, because he's not the creator. Meaning, if something starts, if something exists, it exists because the creator made it. By definition, it was created and thus had to have come from the creator. It is the secondary thought that ends up being the usurper, or Satan, as Christians call him. But it's the concept that when we're going about our lives and we're experiencing and we're feeling and we're tasting and we're touching, and we're feeling joy, and we recognize the sun, we recognize the wind, we learn, we meet people, we experience all the things that we're experiencing. 99% of all the pain and suffering that you experience is going to come in second guessing what is already apparent, what is already there, what you already see, what you already feel. 99% of your misery will come from seeing something, feeling it, recognizing its goodness, and then letting doubt creep in, being like, well, maybe that's not what that means, or maybe that's not, and then second guessing things that otherwise seem completely true right off the bat. Because on a conceptual level, if the thought existed in the first place, it had to have come from the creator, and it could only be changed by the usurper, just by definition, because for something to exist, it has to be created. You see what I'm saying? That's kind of like, it's kind of a complex thought, but it's just, it's pointing me to the point of when you're living your life, recognize that you can live off of intuition. You can live off of instinct. You can follow what the Christians call the spirit. But if you're an atheist, or you're a spiritualist, however you perceive the universe, you can follow the conscience. You can follow that motive, because for you to receive that inspiration or that thought or that feeling to begin with, it had to have come from the same source that made you exist in the first place, which
Correct.
is the creator. Do you see what I'm saying?
Your source energy is communicating with you all the time. And if you stop interfering and you start allowing, you ask and it is given.
One of my favorite quotes that I heard, and I don't know who said it originally, but that happiness, joy, is not a matter of addition, it's a matter of subtraction. Okay, there's so much that already exists that's perfect, and there's so much garbage that's put on top of it so that we can't see it and experience it. If we want to experience that true joy, we just need to subtract all the things that are distracting. And it's just like you said, we exist energetically. Joy is a wave. It's an energy. It exists. The only thing that the usurper can do to wreck that wave is by broadcasting static.
Yeah.
To interrupt the signal. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, if you're allowing that, that's the problem. This is the reason why turning off the television matters. This is the reason why it matters to go take your shoes off and walk barefoot outside. Even if you just, if you're having a fight with somebody, if you take your shoes off, or if you just even walk outside, they say go for a walk. I know because we say this to men all the time. I think you need to go take a walk, right? Go take a walk. It's like, but really what it means is if you go outside and ground yourself for a minute, you go outside or if you hold a dog or a cat or a baby or just stop, walk out, turn everything off for a minute. It doesn't take very long for you to realign yourself with what is true, and that truth is your source energy. It's your God force. But if all you keep hearing is negative, but that's because you're not allowing yourself to actually ever listen to anything else. And that, if you start your day with the television on or the radio, if the radio alarm is what you wake up to them talking about whatever nonsense already. And who created these alarm clocks in the first place? The corporatocracy wants you. They want your time. They're just sucking. Also, Satan was created by God too, by our creator. Our creator created the angels, created all of these different entities. So the reason that there is no way that Satan will ever destroy our creator is because the creation will never stand over the creator.
It's physics says it's impossible, because we know what when we're talking about the first laws of entropy, the first laws of thermodynamics, laws of thermodynamics, energy can't be created and it can't be destroyed, right? It can only transition, okay? And a system, regardless, can only give as much energy as itself contains, right? A battery can't give more electricity than is in the battery. So when you think about that,
we can regenerate.
Yeah, because we're a battery that can recharge. Yeah, which is great. But the point there is to say this: anything that is created is, according to physics, impossible to be greater in energy than the thing that created it. because the
Correct.
thing that created it can only give as much energy as itself contains, which means the created is always energetically less than the creator.
Correct. Now, that's making me kind of change the subject just a little bit from where you're going with this, if that's
Yeah,
okay
that's
now.
cool. Yeah, if we can wrap it up in the next 5-10 minutes, that'd be great.
Yeah. So bringing it back around, you know, what we all need to know is that this is an expanding universe. Your point was the law supported life because you're talking about the purpose of life, okay? And our purpose here is to expand. The reason we come into the see it, feel it, touch it experience, because and we do it so many times over time, is because we're coming back to experience one more thing. Because how do you get to know things? You do things. You touch it, you see it, you feel it, you smell it, you experience it. And that gives you more and more knowing. And it's cumulative. Once you know it, you can't unknow it. Once you hear what I say, you can't unhear me, right? And that's because we're expanding. This is an expanding universe. And so the law can only limit us for however long before we're going to figure out how to get out. Because again, if our creator created this shaitan, this Satan, this whatever bad guy, we also are creations of our creator. We have equal power to that shaitan or Satan or whatever who's being threatened by us in the first place because we have free will choice. So why don't we just change our mind? If we change our mind and decide to be better and decide only to operate in truth and stop lying, we break out of this. The only thing holding you in bondage in this, Groundhog's Day is the lies. When you stop lying, you're no longer going to be doing that. And what's happening right now is that people are remembering. This is the great remembrance. Everyone is remembering. We're not going to need man's laws because once everyone remembers who they are, Satan can't keep us trapped in that stupid Groundhog's Day anymore. And he's just going to be mad. Like, your brother who tries to, get one over on you or something. And, but then you figure it out. You're like, he's like, well, he figured it out. He's out now. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we're here to help remind everyone. I hope these conversations are just helping people change their mind in a little way. Because like you were saying, Hudson, at the beginning, you come at things very differently. We're of two different generations and we have a completely different background. But it's so fun to speak with you and hang out. And I really appreciate you making time to come and talk with me because, I don't know how we're going to help all the masses if we don't have all the different generations communicating and sharing their perspectives with each other like this. And so I really, really appreciate that you make time to have this conversation with me.
I do too, Niti. I really appreciate all the things you contribute and add, and I'd love to dissect it and go into it further. So I'm excited for our future ones.
Well, we're planning on coming back next week, guys. Hudson's going to meet me next week, and then Jamie's coming the week after that to get back to some natural healing topics. And so, what do you think, man? We just covered so many things, and I think we could take this in any direction. So,
yeah, we went through a lot of things. I think one of the things we could talk about in future episodes is just like the fundamental nature of existence of the universe. Like, I love taking things just from like the smallest place we can and then expanding on it. I think that's one of the things that Anna has done really well, is helping people reset, get out of the corporate system and just realize, okay, I exist. I have flesh. I'm literally on land and soil. This is a good place to start. and then go out from there and experience and learn more. So
Let's do that. Let's do that. And hey, friends, anybody who's watching the replays and who's joined us, we would love to get your comments. We want to know what it is that you're thinking about what we just said. And I'm sure that would help to inspire whatever direction it is that we decide to go next week. And I thank you again, Hudson. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week. It's going to be 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's 1 p.m. What's your time zone?
Mountain
Time. So we'll see everybody next Tuesday.